having a smooth transition, and importance of having an orderly transition. The president respects the will of the American people and wants to make sure that occurs. That is what he believes the American people deserve. And so that is as far as I can go. That is what I am sharing with you from the president directly. And look, we're going to make sure, as Jake Sullivan was saying, that his team has what they need, right? They want to make sure that it is indeed an efficient, effective transition, so that we hand over the people's business so that they can continue the people's business.
Can you say how President Biden answered some of those detailed questions?
I will say that the president certainly looked forward to the meeting, appreciated the conversation, and answered any questions that the president-elect had, offered up his thoughts, but I'm not going to go any further than that. Get Mary.
You said gracious, cordial, substantive. The president obviously hit on a wide range of issues, but did he get a sense that the issues that he was impressing upon, that any advice he was giving was being well received?
I think so. I think that's why the president was wanting me to let you all know that there was a very good back and forth, and it was substantive, as I mentioned before, and I want to be mindful. It was a private conversation, so I don't want to go into specifics or details. But look, they met for more than 2 hours. They met for a very long time, or nearly 2 hours, pardon me. And I think by the length of the meeting tells you that they had an in-depth conversation on an array of issues. And so, look, the president reached out to the president-elect wanting to make sure that he gave an opportunity to the president-elect, afforded him that opportunity to have a meeting with him to talk about the different issues that matter to the American people. But nearly 2 hours says a lot about how the meeting went.
Any plans to keep a line of communication open?
The president is always going to obviously keep that line of communication open to the president-elect. We got to remember, this is not about the two presidents. This is not about President Biden or President-elect Trump. This is about the American people and what's right for the American people. And if anything, the president has led by example, right, over the last week now on making sure that we have this cordial transition of power.
All right, our own Edward Lawrence from the Fox Business Network getting a question in the White House briefing room earlier. Listen.
But a lot was said on the campaign trail, like Trump is a dangerous threat to our country and our democracy. Was there an apology today?
I'm sorry?
Was there an apology from
whom?
President Biden for the words, some of the words used?
An apology from the President Biden.
To President-elect Trump for some of the words that was used on the campaign trail.
Look, and I've answered this a couple of times about a threat to democracy in the past week. The president is going to always feel obligated to be honest with the American people.
All right.
No apology there.
No apology.
No apology.
But that was a rocking couple hours, John, and wow.
Well, Mr. President-elect and the former president, thank you. Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
So there are a lot of things to gather in those few moments, which is why it's important to see all of them. We hadn't heard from Biden. We took it so quickly. So you've got to see that exchange between two people who really were in quite the epic political battle. Not just 4 years ago in 2020, but fast forward up until June 27th and that debate that basically destroyed Joe Biden's opportunity to stay atop the ticket for the Democratic Party. And when you hear the president-elect say politics is tough, and after that's over, it can be a nice world. We're in a nice world today. Martha, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
Well, first of all, that this is very short.
Right?
They brought in former President Trump. It appears to me that the White House wanted this to be as tight a moment as humanly possible.
Why do you think that is?
Well, gracious invitation, obviously, from Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a career, lifelong politician. These two men could not be more different. Donald Trump has spent his entire life in business, and then he became president and learned the ropes. Joe Biden has been in Washington since he was 28 years old. So these two men, while they are in the same ballpark of age, they are light years apart in so many ways. But I think they wanted this to be tight, Harris. I don't think they wanted to give the incoming president the opportunity to sort of take this moment over. But it was a cordial moment between these two men, and this is what I think America wants to see. I thought, for me, the most sort of poignant moment was when Biden looked at Trump and said, "Welcome back."
Yeah. Bill.
It's quite a moment. I agree with you, Martha. I wrote that down as well. By the way, that fire behind them is ripping. And I don't know. I don't know if the meeting they're about to have will be as warm as that fire between the two men, but we'll find out momentarily. When he met with Barack Obama, the meeting went 90 minutes. Who's to say how long this goes? I thought what Jake Sullivan said on CBS on Sunday was kind of interesting. He said, we want to know what his ideas are. I don't think Donald Trump is the kind of guy who wants to show his hand. He's got fires that he wants to put out all over the world.
Literal ones.
Yeah, and some of these cabinet positions, not necessarily cabinet, but the people on his team, I think are very interesting. You know, Fox Digital reported 2 hours ago, they broke the news that there will be a Ukraine envoy to try and settle that matter. And that's going to be massively complicated, by the way.
Do you think that came up or will come up as these two men talk?
I imagine it will. I mean, that would be my guess. But again, I don't think Trump's the kind of guy that wants to show his hand on this. Now, I think with regard to President Biden, he wants Trump to know what they're doing now. And there's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning. It lays out how complicated this is to peel away the different factions, whether it's Putin, whether it's Iran, whether it's the North Koreans with upwards of 10 to 15,000 troops ready to join that battle. And then you've got Zelensky and whether or not he would take a deal. So that's massively complicated. I think the other thing, Stephen Witkoff is a man that most Americans don't know. He's a highly successful and very accomplished individual. He's been really good friends with Donald Trump going back 30 years. He's going to be the Middle East envoy. There is a possibility, you know, as you know, this peace deal that was moving forward between the Saudis and the Israelis that was blown up on October 7th after Hamas, you know, broke through the fence and went into Israel. That has a chance of coming back. And that has a chance of coming back on track. And if it does, that entire region has the potential to change.
So that's so interesting because we have seen reports recently of Jared Kushner coming back into the picture a little bit. And of course, the Abraham Accords were so monumental. It's one of the few areas that Biden didn't touch, actually, in terms of Trump policy. I think he gets where we are in the world. You notice that he's not going to expire, as lack of a better term, the weapons money that we're giving them and the accoutrement that goes with that, actual weapons to Israel. I mean, that calendar has slowed down now under Biden's watch. Martha, what's your quick
Well,
comment?
I'm just thinking about the Secretary of State spokesperson saying, you know, well, we're not going to basically publicly admonish Israel yet. Right? We're not going to cut off the weapons supply yet. We're watching what happens. We're watching whether or not enough aid flows into Gaza. The tone has shifted dramatically with the people who have been appointed. You see, Mike Huckabee will be the ambassador to Israel. This is a team that is very Israel strength focused. We know that Netanyahu and Trump have had at least 3 conversations. This tone has completely changed. My guess, you know, former President Trump loves to interact with people. He loves to talk to people. I think this meeting will be beefy in that response. But I don't think they're going to dig a lot into the future policy.
Well, and Bill made a good point. John, I'll come to you next. I mean, Trump isn't going to show his hand. However, he did a bit when he was running to the American people, to voters. And it may be part and parcel for the support that he got from the Jewish community. You cannot ignore the pickup of Jewish voters in this country, given all of the anti-Semitic behaviors, riots, protests, death threats, actual violence. I mean, it has been quite the last 6 months to a year. So it makes sense for him to make that public during the campaign, what he would do. He was going to reach out, talk with leaders before he became the president in January. Just your thoughts and reporting on that. I know you were in Israel not too long ago.
Yeah, and I think that the appointment of Mike Huckabee, or at least the nomination of Mike Huckabee to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, is a brilliant move on the president's part. Huckabee, very dedicated to Israel. Israel loves Huckabee, and I think that will facilitate a very constructive dialogue between the United States and Israel. Don't forget, as you pointed out, the president vowed that he would end the Ukraine war before he took office. So we'll see what he does on that front. We'll see what his conversations with Vladimir Putin might lead to. This idea of maybe ending the war in the Middle East in a fairly short time period, I think, is one that will go over well. A friend of mine lives in Beirut. She told me that all the women in Lebanon are crushing over the choice of Pete Hegseth for defense secretary. Pete, of course, is a very good-looking fella, and they like his military record, but they also think that he will be part of this idea of peace through strength. Let me come back also to the point that I was making earlier, that Harold also alluded to, about the effectiveness of a Trump second term. Don't forget, literally, from the moment he took office on January 20th, 2017, he was under siege. He was under siege from Democrats. He was under siege from the media. At every turn, the wolves were at the door. Over the past 4 years, and I never meant to say that he was not working, because he was working every day. He was just out of office. But over the last 4 years, he's really come to realize and identify where the traps are, where the pitfalls are in the presidency, and how to avoid them. And I think just by virtue of the cabinet picks that we have seen so far, Trump learned a lot from his first administration, and I think that he won't be as under siege as he would have been.
Well, we shall see. I mean, Judge Juan Merchan may have something to say about that. I mean, we thought we were going to get a decision this week in the case that has a sentencing date for November 26th. Now, that date moves off the calendar, and we're waiting for November 19th to see if that conviction will stay and there will be sentencing with that. I mean, we're still watching lawfare against this president-elect. It's an interesting spot to be in.
President-elect Donald Trump in Washington today and making waves as he rapidly fills out his cabinet. In the past couple of hours, he's announced that Marco Rubio will be Secretary of State, Tulsi Gabbard to serve as his Director of National Intelligence, and he picked Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General. That just came out. It comes off a whirlwind day for the incoming president, who had a big meeting with President Biden in the Oval Office. And here's that historic moment.
Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you. Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. And, thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much.
That meeting lasting about 2 hours. So what was said behind closed doors? Well, Donald Trump revealing to the New York Post that he and Biden both really enjoyed seeing each other, and adding this: "We really had a really good meeting. I asked for his views and he gave them to me. Also, we talked very much about the Middle East. Likewise, I wanted to know his views on where we are and what he thinks. And he gave them to me. He was very gracious." And the White House calling it a very cordial, very gracious and substantive meeting. But hey, what happened to all that threat to democracy stuff? Well, Corinne Jean-Pierre had this to say about that.
A lot was said on the campaign trail, like Trump is a dangerous threat to our country and our democracy. Was there an apology today?
I'm sorry?
Was there an apology from
President
Biden for the words, some of the words used?
The president is going to always feel obligated to be honest with the American people. What he says still stands.
Harold, it's great to have you back around the
Glad to be
table.
back.
Yeah. And we haven't had a chance to hear from you this week on the 5 yet, so let's turn the floor over to you.
So congratulations again to the president. I thought today's meeting was full of both substance and pageantry. It's one of those meetings that picture there is something that says to the world that as harsh and, as the former president acknowledged, president-elect acknowledges, politics can be, as rough and tumble as it can be rhetorically, that the leaders of the respective parties can come together and give and not only transfer power, but each of them converse with one another about things that they're thinking about, and the current president sharing with this president some of the things on his mind. I do believe that President Trump, I heard it said earlier, I was on a show with 11 o'clock show this morning, and John Roberts made a really, really good point. I think a point that some probably have made, but I hadn't thought about it quite as clearly until he said it, that the 4 years away from the Oval Office for President Trump will likely make him a better president, a more productive president, because he understands what he's getting into. He has a clarity of purpose, clarity of mind. Obviously, as we see now with some of the announcements about picks for serious, important jobs in administration. But I was pleased with this today, and I'm hopeful that those in Congress watch this and realize that we got a lot of things that they campaign on, including taxes and making the country, our borders safer and communities safer from crime. And President Trump wants to do those things. He's going to need partners in Congress to do it. And now that the Senate has a majority leader in John Thune, they'll hit the ground running.
Judge, for all these people who want to go to the airport and leave the country because they were afraid that there wouldn't be a peaceful transition of power, this looks pretty optimistic.
You know, I think that Americans should look at this image that we're seeing and think about this day as a very serious day and appreciate the fact that it reflects a smooth transition of power. You know, Trump was called everything from a threat to democracy. If he were elected, you know, it would be, the end of America as we knew it. There were people trying to kill him. He got shot. And he came in as a gentleman. Donald Trump, whether it's because he's more serious now, I'm not sure what the reason is. I think President-elect Donald Trump, understands that he has a job to do, and he's not going to waste his time, getting involved in the little tit for tats that we may have seen during the first term. And we know that already because there was so much said by people on MSNBC and CNN. He didn't even respond to any of it. So he is very focused. And I think he was very gracious, given how the man on his right said that he was a threat to democracy and that he was Hitler and a fascist. I don't know that many people who could actually have sat there with a smile and said, politics is tough, but today is a great day. And what I think is also interesting, I'll just end on this, is that Joe Biden apparently gave a letter to President-elect Trump. And, she was the one who I think could have a lot of bad feelings. She felt that Joe was thrown out, and then, they blamed Joe afterwards, and she was sitting next to Kamala on Veterans Day. They didn't even look at each other. It'll be interesting to see and hear what she has when she's out of the White House.
Yeah, she writes another book, indeed. One of the first things President Trump did, Jesse, was go to the House Republicans, thank Speaker Johnson, say, Speaker Johnson's the guy. Let's not have any of these shenanigans or any of these fights, like the judge was saying, because he knows he's got a limited time frame to get a lot done.
Yeah, so Mike Johnson and Thune, they're in, so that's the team. But wow, I have to say something nice about Joe Biden, and I don't know why I'm feeling this way. Maybe because Greg's wearing animal skins, or the stock market's roaring, or I know every single member of the cabinet. Some of them even owe me money. Yeah. But Biden was gracious today, and the country needed that. And I don't know why he chose this tradition of lunch to be gracious after he disrespected the tradition of, raiding your rival's house, arresting him, and calling him Hitler. I'm not inside Biden's brain. I don't know what he's thinking. He probably doesn't know what he's thinking either. But the country needed to see these two leaders sitting in chairs by a fire and pretending that they don't want to strangle each other. We needed that. Now, Melania's absence was obviously an admission that Joe Biden's disgusting. Why would Donald Trump hide documents in his wife's underwear drawer while he lives in a 100,000 square foot mansion? It's the dumbest hiding place of all time, and that's why Joe's a little sick. Let's put that aside. Can you believe Pete Hegseth is going to be the next Secretary of Defense? So I had a hard time wrapping my head around it last night, and now I love it. And then as I was wrapping my head around it, mostly thinking about how I can benefit from it. Can I use this plane to go somewhere?
No.
No is the answer.
No.
I've been told that already. And then they hit me with Gates, and I'm starting to understand Greg's pirate analogy. And it reminded me of the '92 Dream Team. Remember, Harold?
I do.
When they assemble magic Mike and Larry into one team, and no one's ever thought about that before. And now this is what you're looking at. You're looking at the dream team. They're assembling a constellation of stars, which I happen to know intimately. And I've never been this excited before. I am so excited for this country, not for me personally, although that's there. I'm just so excited for the change that we're going to see in the next 4 years.
I hope they pay you their money before confirmation.
Yep,
hearing.
and I'm not talking about Pete.
All right. Greg, would you like to get a comment on what you're wearing or just...
Please.
This is very comfortable, I have to tell you. It seems
Can I
comfortable
feel
to you.
it?
It is comfortable. Very good.
I want to touch it.
No, you're going to HR, Dana. That was all a trick. But this is where 60 million people just realized another media narrative is a lie, because they're all lies. How can that guy be Hitler when you welcome him with such regard? Enough about that. I'm with Jesse on this. I'm looking at the speed of these nominations and the type of them, and there are no F's given. It's the difference between wanting something and deciding. In 2016, Trump wanted to be president. He wanted to lead. He wanted to get stuff done. Second time around, he's decided. There's no longer any decision making. You can feel it. It's deliberate. It's definitive. We felt this way before. You wanted to move, you wanted to quit a job, you wanted to end a relationship. And then there's that moment that you decide, and boom, 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 boom. Everyone around you realizes, wow, this is more than a victory. In fact, it's transformational. It's not just that the Democrats were vanquished, but an entire age has closed. The death of identity politics, it's there, of race-based reward and punishment, the tyranny of the aggrieved. And a new age has started, and I echo Jesse again. I've never been more hopeful or optimistic in my life. This wasn't just an election. It was a turning point, and I want Democrats to thrive during this period. But the only way for the Democrats to be happy, whether they like it or not, is they have to think less about identity and more about the outside world. Start with your family and your friends and your spirituality. Don't listen to The View and tell what they say you should cut off these people that disagree with you. That is a mistake. You see so many upset people right now, and it's because they became obsessed about their identity, which feeds into your ego. And then when your ego takes a hit, you're miserable. So if you live outside yourself and you remove identity politics, you remove the fuel for your ego. Identity politics was a complicated word for me, me, me. This is why when you saw people entrenched in it, they were so miserable. They were so blind. They couldn't talk to other people. If you replace that inner turmoil with curiosity and service for the outside world, you will be so much happier. It's really ironic that Make America Great Again is about the future.
Yeah.
Because it's talking about the past. But you found out that the Dems were the past in every respect. They felt it necessary to judge present-day individuals by people who existed 100, 200 years ago. We're innocent. They also relied on past media narratives about how people were. This is how black people think. This is how brown people think, right? And they missed out on the sentiment of millions and millions of people. The country no longer was buying what they were selling, and they wanted to do something. Now they decided.
And it's like everybody is back on the same page that America is an exceptional country.
Right.
And you have to participate in it in order to
You can feel it
that way.
You can feel it.
You can feel it. And Harold, you feel it too.
Yeah, Harold.
I know you feel it.
Look, I said that picture of the president sitting there, you can't help but be hopeful when...
I do have to say one thing, though. That fire was roaring,
Loud.
and it was like
Roaring.
75 degrees there today.
Yeah,
so I don't know. It's like a little atmospheric for me.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to change in the next 65 days. Mark, Elizabeth Warren decided that she wanted to go on X and talk about Pete Hegseth. She said, quote, "A Fox and Friends weekend co-host is not qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. I lead the Senate Military Personnel Panel. All three of my brothers served in uniform. I respect every one of our service members. Donald Trump's pick will make us less safe and must be rejected." Well, first of all, she says she respects all service members. Doesn't sound like she respects Hegseth. And I looked through her pedigree. Unlike Pete Hegseth, she did not attend Princeton or go to graduate school at Harvard. So, I mean, is she in a position to be throwing stones?
Well, throwing stones is what she does. This is still politics, even when you're in the minority. And you can expect some of these some of these appointments to get picked at. Look, I think he has, in record time, made a whole number of appointments here. I thought there'd be nobody left in the Senate and the House for a while. And we'd have an incredible number of special elections coming our way. But then he started to diversify the picks somewhat. So, look, I think obviously he knew when he was picking Pete for Secretary of Defense that it was going to be controversial. He's going to get advice and consent. He has a record of serving the military, having written about the military, and he'll testify before the Senate. And I think that will, if he holds up well, he will get confirmed.
And you'll see, it looks like the fire has gotten bigger in the Oval Office since Donald Trump was here 4 years ago. Maybe it's just been going the whole time. But we're told that, and we've learned, Donald Trump actually brought a list of questions for Joe Biden that they went over once the press was ushered out of there. And the two of them, according to the Biden side, had a substantive meeting. It was just the two presidents and the two chiefs of staff, and they're telling us some progress was made.
It was substantive meeting, an exchange of views. They discussed important national security and domestic policy issues facing the nation and the world. President Biden also raised important items on Congress's to-do list for the lame duck session, including funding the government and providing the disaster supplemental funding the president requested.
On the way back to Florida, Trump told the New York Post, I asked for his views, and he gave them to me. Also, we talked very much about the Middle East. Likewise, I wanted to know his views on where we are and what he thinks, and he gave them to me. He was very gracious. The timing of today's meeting is key. Tomorrow, President Biden is going to head to a couple summits in South America with a plan to sit down on the sidelines with China's Xi. And that is what Jake Sullivan is describing as a way to make sure that superpowers don't try anything during this lame duck period.
Transitions are uniquely consequential moments in geopolitics. They're a time when competitors and adversaries can see possibly opportunity because you have this change in government here.
The Biden team confirmed to us that somebody who did not pop their head into this Oval Office meeting today is Vice President Harris.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.